Welcome to Tea with Amber, dear friends. Welcome. I'm just hoping this is going on right now. Hold on. Welcome to Tea with Amber, my friends. I am so happy that you have joined me today. This is episode 3. And as I talk to you, I'm looking out on the window and it's a gray, rainy day out there. And it's a perfect day to put on a shawl and to have one's cup of tea. I hope you have your cup of tea. I'm drinking dandelion root tea today, so this is perfect for this kind of weather. Mm. So, about an hour ago, my lovely daughter, Ananda, texted me and said, "How are you feeling, Mom, about the live stream?" And I had to admit that I was nervous. How can one not be nervous when one is speaking to a screen in one's home and one has no idea who's out there? But I thought about it and I said, the reason I'm doing this, Tea with Amber, is really during challenging times, we have a deeper need to connect to one another. And through our stories, we connect. And we're asked not to be an audience or even viewers, but rather witnesses to each other's journey. And so I see Tea with Amber just as that place where our hearts open to one another. We hopefully are uplifted by the stories and reflections I share with you in this time, and we fall in love with each other. And that, I think, is the ultimate purpose of our life, to fall in love with each other. So, in that spirit of love and beauty on this rainy day, let me start by offering you a reflection that I came across this week that really spoke to our time. It's by the brilliant mythologist Michael Meade. He's a storyteller, and he says this: when the whole world rattles and falls apart, we have to go quietly into the cave, into the depths of the self, because what is lost is waiting to be found there. And if we can trust this, we can transform. I'm going to read it one more time. When the whole world rattles and falls apart, we have to go quietly into the cave, into the depths of the self, because what is lost is waiting to be found there. And if we can trust this, we can transform. So we have arrived here in uncharted territory. We have arrived in a wild terrain where the guideposts of our life have been taken away. We are experiencing what Rilke the poet would call the dark blossoming of chaos. We have all arrived here together, and we have all found ourselves flung into this time of quarantine, lockdown, retreat. It is enforced pause, suspension from everything that we knew to be familiar and habitual, our lives. We have been removed from it during this time of retreat, of pause, of stillness. Now, I recognize that there are many people during this time who are actually busier than they were in the old story, spending a lot of time on Zoom and working harder than ever before. But even there, I think that we have all been given this opportunity of a psychic pause, um, right? So a psychic pause, a psychic sense of suspension. The way I like to look at any event in my life is through the lens of story. Stories give us meaning. We live in our stories. They give us our sense of identity. They shape our destiny. We have come to a point in our lives on the planet where one story is coming to an end. We can always tell when a story is coming to an end in our own personal lives. It's because we start feeling exhausted, burnt out, anxious, confused, lost. And here we are experiencing the dominant culture's collapse. And whether we like it or not, the collapse is imminent. We see it everywhere. We read about it in the news. We see the way that the institutions, the systems are literally unraveling. The caterpillar is dissolving and dying. The past has pushed us out. There is no return. Somebody who spoke very powerfully about story and whose insights, I think, are extraordinarily helpful during this time is Joseph Campbell, the mythologist, who spent his life exploring the world, excavating stories from all parts of the world, indigenous stories, contemporary stories, it didn't matter. But he finally arrived at a conclusion. He said, there is only one story that holds all stories. There is only one story that holds all stories. It is the archetypal pattern in which the entire human race and human history has evolved. And that is the hero's journey. There are three essential components to the hero's journey. The first is separation, where the hero is involuntarily goes on an adventure. The second is initiation, where he spends time slaying the dragons, meeting his allies, going through this profound time of transformation, the alchemy of that shift. And the third essential component to the hero's journey is the return, where after going through this initiation, he returns back to his life, but this time transformed, victorious in terms of meeting his demons and moving through them. That story, I think, can be extremely helpful to us as we try and navigate our way through this time and make sense of it. See ourselves as heroes and heroines on this mythic journey. Because imagine our grandchildren, great-grandchildren looking back at the time and asking how was it? What was that time about? There is something epic, and I think we all recognize it and this time. So we have all arrived in that chrysalis. We are living and breathing in this time of the chrysalis. I call it the chrysalis cave because we are indeed here in a cave, both in our homes, in our bodies, in our world. The cave can be terrifying. It is terrifying. It's wild. It's sitting in the darkness of the unknown. The cave is also inviting us to begin to look at our lives and our stories from perhaps a different place. Nelson Mandela said, "Let the darkness speak. Let the darkness speak." Because it is in the dark, even as we are terrified of what it is going to reveal to us, it is in the dark that we get to see ourselves more clearly, if we're open to the journey. For some of us, the dark is so terrifying, we will not open ourselves up. We will close down. We will go into despair. We will fall into that hole. For others, the dark is a time of quiet, stillness, sort of that place where one can begin to once more meet oneself and remember who one is. This time of retreat and psychic suspension is offering us the opportunity to come home to ourselves, to remember who we are, to look at what it is we want to seed as we will move into our new story. So let the darkness speak. When we arrive in the cave, we feel extraordinarily vulnerable. Aren't we all so vulnerable now? There is courage to vulnerability. There is beauty to vulnerability. Vulnerability requires us to put down the armor that we have so skillfully and carefully cultivated, the masks we wear in the social world and the ways we move, the appearance that we put on for the world, all of the ways we keep that armor on to protect ourselves from each other. But when we arrive in this cave time and we are now vulnerable, what starts happening in this place of being stripped naked, in that sense, is that we begin to open up our hearts. We reach out to one another. We begin to connect with each other. And rather than looking to be fixed, the beauty of vulnerability is that it is asking us to belong. Have you noticed in your own life in the past weeks in quarantine, in this retreat time, how many people you have reached out to? How many you've connected with that you would never would have before? How in your vulnerability you're opening up your heart. That is the power of vulnerability, the courage. And that is one of the gifts we will take from this time. The cave also invites us to let go. Now, this is painful. Who would want to let go of one's comfort, of what is familiar, of where one has always lived? Who wants that? That's the point of the hero heroine's journey. The journey chooses us. We do not choose it. And here we all are in this time, having to go on this journey, which was not our choice. But there it was. The virus arrived. So letting go is hard. However, even in the process of letting go of all that was familiar, we have the opportunity to meet ourselves and ask ourselves the deeper question. Now, so much of our time, we are in survival mode. And we live in a system, a paradigm, a worldview that encourages the survival scarcity mode. How am I going to make a living? Where am I going to live? How am I going to pay my bills? I mean, those are all survival questions. They're important questions because a lot of people right now are going through tremendous, tremendous hardship. And I don't want in any way to lessen that. But I do want to remind us that there is this sense that even here, we have to meet ourselves and say, what is the question I really want to ask of my life? What is my purpose? Why am I here? With all my gifts, how do I really want to express them in the world? How do I show up in my world? Who will I become when I enter into the new story? These are questions that we don't ask when we are in the comfort zone of our lives. They only start showing up almost urgently when we are being stripped down and we are letting go of all that held us in the past. So the cave invites us even into that place. The cave also invites us to a place of revelation. The apocalypse is another word for revealing oneself. That's what it means. And in the cave, we get to really meet ourselves again. And this time, we are looking at ourselves, perhaps even from a place of saying, what is my truth? Who in my life supports me? Who are my allies? Who are the people in my life that I don't think I want to be around them because they don't support the essence of my well-being? The cave is that place where in the darkness we are seeing with clear eyes. Our eyes begin to open to what the truth is. And as we notice right now, as we look at our world, at our society, and the ways in which it is meeting the coronavirus, we see with clear eyes how our systems are reacting and responding to this time, what the truth is underneath. the foundations that perhaps have been rotting for a while, which is what the transmission from Corona Kali had offered me, that insight when I had it. So even as we feel the terror of being in this time and, oh my God, what's going to happen to me? And how am I going to do this? And how am I going to live? I want us to pause. I want us to be gentle with ourselves. I want us to be tender with ourselves and ask ourselves, let me just trust. Let me be open and let me find clarity. Those will be my three power weapons, if there's another word, power shields to take into the world. Clarity, openness, and trust. As I was thinking about today's episode, I was also looking back, of course, at my life and the triumphs and defeats, the sorrows and losses, the full catastrophe of human life. And I was remembering the 10-year-old girl in me who left her lovely, beautiful, happy childhood and home in Uganda and was sent off to a boarding school in England, a world so far away. The separation, the initiation, and the return. There it was for the 10-year-old. And then later, when I was 21, suddenly, without ever anticipating it, my family, we became refugees. We lost everything. A radio broadcast one day in Uganda, and the tyrannical dictator Idi Amin announced that all people of Indian origin were to leave his country within 90 days or we would be shot on sight. Right there, we lost everything. My father died within a year of that. The heroine hero's journey, which I had never chosen, pushed me out, and I arrived in a cave. And from that place, I had to find a way to rise up and reemerge. And when I look back at some of those events in my life, there are two lessons I carry from the vast numbers of lessons that we all learn in our lives through these experiences. The first lesson I carry is this: no matter what the circumstances of your life, it will be the meaning you give those circumstances that will shape your destiny as you move out into your new story. It is not the circumstances, however painful they are, but it's the meaning. And the second life lesson I learned was that no matter how much life comes and beats you down, the spirit in you never dies. The spirit always rises. The phoenix always rises out of the ashes. Right? That life coursing through our beings always has to celebrate itself. But here's the thing. We all have a power shield. And that power shield is choice. We all have the ability to make choices, whether we're going to step into the story and the meaning we give it will be one of deep, deep, deep darkness and tragedy, or we will look at it as an opportunity, crisis opportunity. It is up to each of us how we're going to journey through this. And I wish us all great luck as we move through this time. So that brings me to this moment of revelation. And I want to share with you, I'm just going to, something is on my screen and it's distracting me, and I'm just going to put it off there. So here's the thing. There are amongst you many of you who have had some mysterious events happen in your life, events that you could never explain with your rational mind. Remember last week we talked about the indigenous presence on the planet, and they said that we have become so rational. This is the mind virus that we face, that in fact it is by opening our hearts that we can move through this time. So I want to introduce you to a very special presence in my life. And I almost have tears in my eyes bringing her out because you will know why. So uh, meet my goddess. Meet my statue. She's 9 inches tall. She's stone, onyx. I bought her in a shop in the deserts of Rajasthan about 30 years ago. I've always loved her. I've carried her with me, wherever I have moved. But here's the thing. This is why I want to reveal her to you. On January the 1st, 2016, this goddess statue, which always sits on a table, had moved. She was facing the window like this. When I saw that, I thought I must have moved her. I don't remember moving her, but I must have moved her. And so I put her back. And there she was, facing the room. A few days later, I looked at my goddess, and this time, again, she was facing the window. This was very baffling, puzzling. I don't have a dog or a cat in my house. I don't have a cleaning lady coming. So there was no rational reason I could think of as to why this statue on her own was moving. So a week later, I told a friend who came over, I said, listen, something very strange is happening in my room. Come and see this. And she came and she said, Amber, don't move her back to the original position. Let her do what she needs to do. Who knows? I agreed. So I left her to just do what she needed to do. And the goddess began to turn around slowly, slowly on the table, imperceptibly. I never heard her turn. I never saw her turn. But when I would look a day or two later, she would have turned. Now, the rational mind will rebel. For that is the nature of the rational mind, the skeptical mind, the doubtful mind. Come on, what do you mean this goddess the statue moves by herself on a table? That's impossible. That goes against the law of all physics. But the intuitive mind said something different. She said, pay attention. Something beyond the mind is happening here. The mystery that has come into your life. Pay attention. So, for a couple of weeks, the goddess continued to move very slowly. About 2 weeks later, I went up to her and I said, bowing to this deity, I asked if she had any messages for me, and she gave me 4. Since that time, 3 years ago, I have received no more messages from her. So I'm going to reveal to you, my dear friends, the 4 messages from the goddess about how to navigate through these times. Her first message was this. She said, now, when I say she said, I heard it through my intuitive mind. It came through very clearly, just as my transmission did, which I read to you from my journal. She said, be still, the storms are coming. Be still, the storms are coming. The kind of stillness she was inviting me to have where you are rooted so deeply into the earth, like a tree that stands there strong, rooted, grounded, without being buffeted by the winds of the storm. In other words, being like the bamboo tree. When it meets the storm, the bamboo leans towards the winds. It doesn't break like the brittle birch. Be still, the storms are coming. So learn and practice being steady and still. And in any way your practice takes you, find that place so that you're not constantly reacting to the forces around you. And remind yourself, this too shall pass. Message number 2, which is a very curious message. Do not be taken in by appearances. Do not be taken in by appearances. A stone statue, according to the laws of physics, should not move by herself. That is her appearance. So what is it that we are looking at right now on this horizons of these times, which is the appearance of what we're seeing, but what might be behind it? What are we not seeing? What is being revealed to us? Might this time be a blessing? We don't know. But don't just focus on the appearance. It's a very curious message, and I'm still kind of exploring it. And I'm hoping that you will also explore this message in your life. The third message was, look at all aspects of a situation. Just as she turns clockwise and looks at all sides of the room, look at all aspects of a situation. The Native Americans would say, be like the eagle, flying high, looking down at the whole landscape, not becoming so hardened in your position, your rightness, and therefore becoming susceptible to blame and anger and those sort of capacity to come from the hardened heart. I am right and you are wrong. As Rumi said, that wonderful quotation, right? Beyond the field of wrongdoing and right doing, you will find me there. So the goddess was sort of saying in that message, don't be so quick to judge. Don't be so quick to condemn. Look at all sides of that situation. This way, your empathy will open. Your heart will open, the sense of compassion for others who are going through a situation very different from yours and who are making the decisions they're making because of their situation. So this was requiring great compassion. And her fourth message was, during this time, the sacred masculine and the sacred feminine must walk together. And I know that in all our lives, we see the devastation that has been caused by the misogyny rampant on the planet, by the hatred of the Mother Earth, by the ways in which the feminine has been battered and bruised and diminished. We see that, and we have lived that. So the goddess reminds us that it is in the balance. It is not about discarding the masculine, but rather finding a way to walk together, because each has so much to give to one another. Each holds each other. So those are my beautiful goddesses' 4 messages to you all, and I want you to consider them in your own life. Look at the 4 and ask yourself, how is that showing up in my life? What does that mean for me? This time of deep inquiry will take you into that place of clarity, openness, and trust. So, how are we doing for time? Oh, good. This was perfect timing. I'm almost done with my half hour. So, I want now to leave you with a beautiful poem by one of my favorite poets, mystics, philosophers, the Irish John O'Donoghue. And if you don't know John O'Donoghue, please give yourself the gift of finding out more about his amazing work. This is, and you may close your eyes if you're sitting someplace comfortably, so you can really take in the treasure of these words. This is the time to be slow. Lie low to the wall until the bitter weather passes. Try as best as you can not to let the wire brush of doubt scrape from your heart all sense of yourself and your hesitant light. If you remain generous, time will come good, and you will find your feet again on fresh pastures of promise, where the air will be kind and blushed with beginning. So on that lovely note from John O'Donoghue, I want to thank you for joining me for tea today. The rain has left. Oh my goodness. Be kind to yourself this week. Be generous with yourself. Open your heart. Connect deeply. And celebrate if you can. Dance, move your body, go into nature, nourish yourself. And my Tea with Amber now has also got a YouTube channel called Tea with Amber. I would love you to subscribe to it, just because you can see all of the episodes will be on it, and it would be lovely to have you subscribe to it. And so I will look forward to seeing you next Tuesday at 4. So be well, my friends. Thank you. Goodbye.